A 10-minute special with Stefan Wirth from the developers of Endzone World, apart from Gently Mad Studios. Hello, Stefan.
Hi, guys.
Stefan is the studio director there. Endzone World Apart recorded live on Twitch. A little mini tutorial, 10. The best tips from a developer's perspective on many things. I spontaneously throw a few keywords at Stefan, and the whole thing is also recorded for YouTube in the chat. We'll start, Stefan, with the special challenge to answer as briefly and yet as informatively as possible. Are you ready?
I'll do my best. Yes, I'm ready.
That's very good. Number 1, is there an ideal construction sequence?
There definitely is. Water first, then food, and then a few houses.
What are the building materials you should definitely get at the beginning? Is there also a kind of tiered order? And is this raw material the next one?
Exactly. Definitely scrap and wood first. It's very important to build that up sustainably. And then besides food and water, of course, the next important materials are plastic and metal.
What do you think is the game's most important resource?
Whoa. That's hard to say. There are a lot of plastics. No, water. I'll go with water.
That was close. Water. Why is water fundamental?
Because it simply fulfills one of the basic needs and can occur rarely.
When we start a game on a random map and we don't start near a lake that's at least somewhat close, what should we do? Restart or tough it out? Any tips from you? How do you deal with that situation?
That's a great challenge. I recommend everyone try it at least once. I'm not going to reveal the strategy for that right now.
There are many possibilities in the game regarding what you could research and when. Keyword, research. What do you think is the best research? The first one, exactly.
So not necessarily the first one you should do, but for me the most important one is electricity. Personally, because with it you can boost your entire settlement extremely well, making it more efficient and greatly increasing productivity.
Especially at night. The settlement is less productive at night than during the day. Keyword, radioactivity. When should you start paying attention to how contaminated the environment is in the game, and what are the first efficient steps to take against it?
At the start of the game, I don't think environmental contamination matters much, since you can quickly protect yourself with scarves. But at some point, once you've taken the first steps, you should start building masks and making them available to everyone. That's the most important keyword.
Tools help with efficiency. People don't need new tools for a long time if you have them. At what quality level should you start? With the tools, what should you make from the beginning, and when should you upgrade to better tools?
Exactly. I would always start directly with the metal tools. Those are also the best you can make. I only recommend the scrap tools if there are shortages. And for some reason, maybe you didn't keep an eye on metal production and can't make the metal tools.
Another question in our mini tutorial. This is the long list of questions I prepared earlier. You see, I'm well prepared. You see lots of points on the list. Nothing is improvised. This is my cheat sheet for it. Next topic, professions and settlers. Is there a ratio for how many settlers you need compared to people actually working in a profession?
So it's definitely important to always have a few free settlers when it comes to that. At least that's how I understand it, because people in professions can die and then free settlers can take their place. That's always a big advantage.
How many builders should you have? If you have 1 or 2 construction projects, is there a specific formula per project? How do I check how many builders I should have?
Personally, I always do it so that I just put about up to half of my free settlers into builders as a rule of thumb. If I urgently need it, I sometimes temporarily assign all free settlers to finish the construction projects. But otherwise, there isn't really a rule of thumb for each building about how many you absolutely have to assign. Just make sure you always have a good number assigned there.
When a drought comes, everything dries up, the lakes dry out, you can't get any water, and you can't get any more fish either. At what point do I react to that? So when do I start reducing the number of people working in those professions to respond to it? And when do I increase it again?
It's best to do that as soon as the drought starts, but not too early since the game gives early feedback that a drought is coming. In the future, when the lake has dried up, just take all the fish out, and when the lake has water again, put the fish back in. Later in the game, it doesn't really matter. You don't need as much micromanagement, just leave them in during the drought.
Speaking of education, you can build schools and later upgrade them. How does education work in the game, and how many teachers should work there?
Education operates with 4 distinct training modes. This means that settlers are trained either in their productivity, in handling tools or clothing, or in learning badges that are important for expeditions. Especially at the beginning of the game, with the first school, you can only focus on one of these, and I would always choose productivity. Unless you say you're a player who has big problems with clothing, then you should train clothing and definitely upgrade the school later in the game. You need to research this beforehand, so all training modes can be taught simultaneously.
Did you really just say, if you're a player who has problems with clothing? Are nudists your target audience?
Exactly, nudists and exhibitionists are the main audience.
We'll cut that out later if I remember. Another topic, the question, how do I deal with the variety of foods? How important is it to really rely on different foods? Is there a strategy where you just say you'd rather not do something? For instance, if you start by the lake with plenty of fish, that's the quickest and most efficient way, especially when you don't have many people at first. How do you deal with the topic of food variety versus specialization?
Exactly, so it's the same here. At the beginning of the game, it's not that important to have different food sources. It's enough if you can get by with 2 fields and a fishing hut, 3 sources in total. The longer you play, the more important it becomes because it increases the risk of diseases. So you really have to offer a variety of food to keep the settlers as healthy as possible.
I've often experienced during streaming that people mainly ask questions about how to get people to do what they're supposed to do. So I want people to do a certain job in the short term. Resources are running low somewhere, so how can we get more? We can't assign people to buildings individually. Are there any tricks or workarounds for that? How can I get people to do what I want?
Well, for one thing, it's important that the settlement is built very efficiently, so you really have to think about where people need to walk. What other buildings do they depend on, and where are the warehouses placed, for example? If you focus on that, you'll have fewer problems with people since they can usually work efficiently. If not, see if you can temporarily take people from other professions. For example, if you have a lot of water, you can simply halve the number of water carriers and assign them to other professions instead. Where there is an emergency, you can assign more people there, and that works too. Then production becomes more efficient until the emergency is resolved.
A question from the chat by Clairshin. Sometimes it's hard to find buildings because they're all very nicely designed. Everything looks very atmospheric. They're all cobbled together from scrap, tarps, and various leftovers. But of course, they also have to have a uniform look, otherwise the game world would look strange. How can I quickly find certain buildings, Clairshin asks, when I'm looking for them?
Exactly. The quickest way, if you don't want to search in the game world, is to use the building menu. Hover over a building to see an arrow selection, check how many you've built, and cycle through them with the arrows. And if in doubt, there's a certain color coding in the game, also in the world. For example, green roofs usually mean something related to resources or logistics. The blue represents water, so you can use it as a guide too.
A question from the chat from Maeva. In this case, especially at the beginning of the game, she often has problems with the satisfaction of her people. Lower satisfaction results in penalties and levels, while higher satisfaction gives bonuses. Can you first explain the topic and also say how important it is, and give a few tips on how to increase it most effectively, especially when resources are scarce and you have few people? That was 3 questions at once. How does it work?
So it works like this. Satisfaction is first divided into 3 main categories, which are low, medium, and high satisfaction. Within those, there are always 3 subcategories, which means that in both the positive and negative levels, you can unlock certain bonuses. For example, if I have extremely high confidence, then my newborn children will have a higher life expectancy, and I think more children will be born as well. People move faster, so there are various advantages you can unlock. It's the same in the negative range. The further I slip into the red negative area, the more bad things can also happen to me. That people might leave, that uprisings might break out, which in the end can sometimes be good, because when people leave, it can also mean that an emergency situation somehow resolves itself.
And the second part of the question that came in, what do I do if I have trouble generating satisfaction because I have few people and few resources? What's the most effective way to do that?
Exactly. So in my opinion, the very best method is to build the forum, because you can. With these small missions that come in from time to time, you can have an incredible impact. There are also positive effects on the settler's confidence, which stack, meaning they can be applied multiple times to a settler. And that's actually not bad at all in emergency situations. Of course, the very best thing is if you have a running settlement, that you have clothing, that you have tools, a house where people can live. That's really the most important thing. And here's a little tip. It doesn't always have to be the best clothing or the best tools to boost morale. A junk tool and a scarf are enough too. Don't forget that. If the situation and effectiveness permit, you can still boost morale even with worse options.
A question just came in the chat about accommodations. It's like, in huts, people reproduce, and that's how you increase the population. And in shelters, in these large mass settlements, people don't have children. That means by building one type of building or another, you can regulate population growth. Also through satisfaction, by triggering certain bonuses or not triggering them. Someone in the chat is asking if there's a typical ratio of huts to shelters, a rule of thumb you should follow throughout the whole game.
So there's no clear ratio for that either. It depends on the player's style. If someone only builds houses, it becomes extremely challenging because the population grows incredibly fast, exponentially. As a person, it's really hard to grasp what exponential growth actually means. And at some point, you're faced with a huge population that you have to take care of first. But if you can handle that, you can also scale up much faster and basically get into the end game much more quickly. But for an average player, I would probably recommend, as a rule of thumb, that you have at most about 2/3 in houses and the rest in the shelter. Maybe more like 50-50?
Is there a minimum number of citizens you should have to get through the game well? And are there maybe different steps for that? Like, until a certain event in the game, say day X or season X, you should have reached a certain number of people. And later, a second value for a different number after a certain number of seasons.
It's hard to give an exact value for that, especially early on when you should double your numbers quickly. I'd say in the first 10 seasons I would claim, and after that in healthy steps. If you have around 100 people by season 30 to 40, you can already work well with that. At that point, you're already in a good position, and from then on, it's almost a luxury. Depending on how much you want to scale the settlement or how many people you want to have, that depends on your game goal again.
Thank you very much. When the game was released, meaning when it went from early access to release, a new feature was added to the game, the raiders, the people who attack you. You can set that optionally in the difficulty settings. Like many other things, you can turn it on or off. And then, at some point in the game, waves of attackers will come at you, and you can stop them. In what way can I stop them, and when should I expect these raids to start?
Right, so currently it's still relatively early, I think. It should start around 30, but that will change again. So they're still tweaking that a bit so that they come a little later. Because we've noticed that it's still very unfair at the moment, and it's also hard to say what the best defense is. So currently I would recommend focusing your research on siren towers relatively quickly. It's hard to achieve, but once you have them, they're incredibly effective and basically drive the raiders away without having to defend yourself with lethal means like metal ammunition. Of course, if that's too exhausting for you because maybe you haven't done many expeditions and haven't unlocked the research yet, you should probably just try to work with metal ammunition and watchtowers as quickly as possible.
That was a first short-minute tutorial in a question and answer format. Thank you, Stefan. That was super concise. We're going to record a second thing now. That will also be added to the Endzone playlist on YouTube. There will be another Q&A session about other aspects of the game. Have fun playing yourself, and thanks to Stefan.
Thank you very much.